Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for United Policyholders webinar on navigating returning home. Gonna do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into our topic. Just remember, if you'd like to download and follow the slide deck, please go to events and download the deck. A little bit about United Policyholders. If you're new to us, we're a nonprofit that's been working as a trusted resource for consumers on insurance issues in all 50 states for the last 32 years. We're funded exclusively by donations and grants, and that allows us to be the subjective voice on insurance consumer issues. And we've been assisting wildfire impacted residents since 1991. United Policyholders is staffed with a small professional team. I have with me today Annie Barber and Amy Ludwig with our team. We have government and nonprofit partners, and we have our volunteers that include our previous catastrophic loss survivors and then consumer-focused professionals. Lisa Thurston is someone who worked with me in the long-term recovery after the Witch Creek fire in 2007. And so she's a team up volunteer for all intents and purposes today. So thank you for joining us, Lisa. Just a reminder, we have our 3 programs, Roadmap to Recovery, that provides that post-disaster information on insurance, restoring assets, and getting back home. Roadmap to Preparedness is where we take those lessons learned to help households and communities reduce risk and be better prepared for disaster. And then our Advocacy in Action is where we fight for those consumer rights. We take those pain points people experience and work with regulators and legislators to improve the consumer protections on insurance. If you are looking for more information about UP's resources to help you, these are recovery help libraries here. Please take advantage of those. They have samples and examples. They link you to our Ask an Expert forum and very specific step-by-step guidance to help you with the process. Fine print, this workshop obviously is not intended to be a general guidance, nor is it legal advice. If you have a specific legal question, we recommend you consult an experienced policyholder attorney. Our speakers are volunteering their time as educators. We're not creating any professional client relationships with any individual today. So no, everybody understands this, but we do have to say this. So today's presenters, Valerie Brown, UP's Deputy Executive Director. Annie Barber is our Roadmap to Recovery liaison in California. And Lisa Thurston is, as I said, a friend of mine, but also somebody who I met who was providing mental health and emotional support after the Witch Creek fire. And she is a licensed clinical social worker at this point now, so practices in Southern California. Lisa, thank you for joining us. I would like to give Lisa the opportunity to tell us just a little bit about herself, since I didn't get a bio slide from her. So Lisa, if you want to share a little bit about you, we would we're very appreciative of you joining us today.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Let's see, in 2007, when we had the Witch Creek fires, we had to mobilize really quickly to cover a lot of area in San Diego. And FEMA came in and created a wildfire recovery program and asked several of us to sort of step up and dedicate a year of our time away from our practices or our jobs and just be available and out in the field, identifying survivors and surveying what was happening. So Valerie was pretty front and center just about everywhere, as she always is. And I teamed up with her and her group and started to also lead some groups and some meetings in churches and around when first responders started to decompensate at about the 5 to 6 month mark. We would have meetings where people would just share what was going on, what had happened. And then, well, that's kind of gives you an idea of what I did there. I've been in private practice for a long, long time. I also am a geriatric specialist in the county of San Diego. That tells you a little about me.
Thank you. So when we move into today's topics, we're going to focus on 4 things. What needs to be wrapped up to move forward, primarily talking about insurance and financial matters. buttoning things up with your contractor. So talking about the build. We're going to talk about observing that anniversary event that's coming up for so many of you. And then finally, making that home you've built repaired, making the house you've rebuilt repaired a home again. They're not interchangeable, and we want to, kind of prepare you for that dissonance that happens, right, Annie?
Absolutely.
So we're going to go through these topics one by one, and then if you've got a question, if you'll put it in the Q&A, we're happy to answer as we go forward. So wrapping it up to move forward, just that reminder, your recovery from a disaster is a marathon, not a sprint. As long as it's taken, understand there's still more to unpack. And so give yourself the grace and the space to, get through this, and then be kind to yourself as you're winding things down. So as far as your insurance goes, we recommend, of course, rereading your policy, declarations page, double check your math, where your limits adjusted for extended replacement coverage endorsements, inflation protection. Make sure you've got that, you've gotten everything that you're owed. Ask for a complete claim summary of all amounts paid to date. You want to correct any errors in payment. Obviously, be organized and keep turning in your seats for reimbursement of your contents benefits. And then again, just keep that best practice of communicating with your insurer in writing as you've closed this up.
And
Don't
remember
forget go
that
ahead.
you have debris removal. If you haven't gotten a bill yet, you want to know exactly what the insurance company has paid on that. So you know how much you're going to have to pay forward.
Right, thank you. And then reminder that if you are feeling a bit overwhelmed and disorganized, we have this spreadsheet created by a Wildfire survivor who was a CPA to help track everything you received and what you're owed. So please do take advantage of that. It's he set it up to be fairly easy to operate as long as you are comfortable with Excel. So don't forget to take advantage of that. And then to-dos before your anniversary date of your fire, just keep documenting your cooperation, your diligence, and your claims journal. If needed, seeking those deadline extensions by customizing and sending one or more of our sample letters. If your insurer says no to your request and you feel you have good cause, please contact your Department of Insurance to see if they can help you move that along. Obviously, both departments in California and Colorado have been very supportive of getting extensions, so they will advocate for you as best they can. Here's a sample of the request for deadline extensions. And then obviously one of the big challenges now as you're wrapping up your insurance claim is you've rebuilt your property. Now you're having to find insurance and make sure that you are adequately insured. And that's a challenge in both California and Colorado. Here's where you can find information on our website specifically for Colorado. There's information there on how to do an insurance checkup and how to, make sure that you're adequately insured, because having done this once, you want to make sure that you are adequately insured moving forward. And then Annie, I'm going to pop it over to you about buttoning things up with your contractor.
Yeah, so about a week before you get you're supposed to get your final occupancy. We don't want to put that in stone. You really, could we go back once? Thank you. You're really going to, first you're going to want to make sure that you have a walkthrough with your builder, and they're more than likely going to give you a roll of blue painter's tape for you to walk around the house and any little dings or issues you're going to highlight. And so you want to do that. Now, as you do that, just know that there's going to be things that come up in every build. It's not indicative of whether you had a good builder or a bad builder. And even after you move back in, after this process is finished and you move back in, there'll be little glitches, and that's normal. It's only if your builder doesn't respond that it's not normal. As you get ready for final occupancy, Also bear in mind that you want to have a little leeway there so that if it doesn't come in the day you're expecting it to, that you don't have the movers coming, you're not bringing stuff and putting it into the garage and voiding out, and this, I know this is on another slide also, and voiding out your builder's risk policy. Your builder, in a perfect world, will give you a binder, and it will have all your warranties in there. It'll have your lien releases. And then at that point, you can expect to do your final payment. If you've hired a private inspector, as you would know at this point, you normally would have 3 inspections, one at foundation, one before closing, and then final occupancy. And that inspection, you really want to make sure you're at, and then it's up to you whether you decide you want your builder there or not. And you want them to come through with a fine-tooth comb and explain things to you. Ask them the questions. Make sure you understand what you're looking at, what they're looking at, and what they're bringing to your attention. But that person should come in before your final inspection. It's up to you to really think about whether you want you're looking at your relationship with your builder at this point and whether he's conducive to an outside inspector, whether you'll get more information from the inspector without your builder there, or if they have a good working relationship, and then you make your decision there. And you'll get a list at that point. Your final walkthrough, which we've kind of already addressed, is generally not your final, because you're going to have your final walkthrough after they finish all the little dings and drips and whatever you see that is just a little bit off. And then when they go to give you the keys, that's going to be your final. And if at that point you see some things that just aren't quite right, as long as they're not safety issues, you're going to move on in, and they're going to come back and fix whatever else you find. The county or city inspection, they will be looking to make sure that your home meets all the safety and energy codes before you are cleared for final occupancy. And, a driveway has to be in. Lighted numbers in California have to be in. It's those kind of things that can set you back a little bit. And it's always good to know how long it will take for that inspection to put it on the books. You don't want to be waiting 3 weeks or 4 weeks for an inspector to become available. And again, make sure you have wiggle room with your movers. So if there's, if your final inspection is supposed to be this date, you need to really coordinate that with your builder and how long will it take you to wrap up all those things? And is there anything that would keep you from getting final? Have that conversation so that you can coordinate things properly. As I mentioned before, don't move contents into the house until you have final occupancy. It'll void your builder's risk policy, and you also don't have full coverage on your house. So you won't have, those contents will not be covered if something were to happen, whether it would be a theft, which happens a lot in these rebuild processes of, a neighborhood not being occupied. So that's really important to understand. I think a lot of people in my neighborhood didn't understand that. And when they jumped the gun and they didn't get the final occupancy, they moved everything into the garage, and then they were just at risk. And then you want that actual piece of paper in your hand or electronic copy, and you want to make sure it goes to all the right people. Lien releases. So in California, they have 6 months to put a lien on your property from the time the subcontractor or contractor finishes work. I've seen a few different things on the Slack channel for Colorado on different time frames. And so I don't have that on the top of my head, but they can only put a lien on your property for that, during that period of time. Once they've extended past that period of time, they're not supposed to be able to. But if you find one that has been put on, even if it's wrong, you still have to pay for an attorney to help you get that off, or talk to the contractor, negotiate that, figure out how to navigate that. Final payment is typically made after the punch list from walkthrough, and lien releases are obtained. And they should have a lien release for absolutely everybody who came in and subbed work. The plumber, the electrician, the tile layer, the painter, everybody who touched your property, there should be a lien release.
All right,
We're
we're
in
going to take a deep breath.
Or two.
All right, and we're gonna touch on observing the anniversary. And this is, you know, your loss and the recovery is now a major part of your life. It's your new normal, right? So don't shy away from seeking professional help. Annie had shared a comment earlier about you have all this time and energy you've put into your rebuild and dealing with your insurance claim, and when you stop moving and all of that stuff, suddenly you have free time to unpack this. So, you know, be aware, right? This is not the time to tough it out, right? So if you're suffering from depression or anxiety, please take the time to get the professional help to get you in a better position. Because you know, the goal is to incorporate this into your life and your family's legacy and make that new normal for you and your family. And then just a reminder, as we say, celebrating those small victories along the way. You know, we recognize that these anniversaries tend to bring up emotions and renewed anxiety. It is a long process. So, you know, look at making new memories, recasting how you view things, and then, of course, celebrating those victories to give you that emotional strength to keep going.
And also just be very aware of your neighbors who may not be as far along as you. And that all of this will induce even more anxiety in them. And just recognize that, because they are part of your tribe now.
Yes, thank you for that. And those friendships and relationships do last a very long time. Just a reminder, you know, this is well, this is a picture of a stud party. You know, a lot of people celebrate by having that open house, having a blessing celebration before they move in. So do take advantage of those opportunities. And sorry, the car alarm has now stopped going off. And another thing people do is take those fragments of and create something beautiful from it. So from those salvage materials, creating art. I've seen people do decorative tiles, you know, taking china fragments that were left and turning it into something lovely. Um, this is someone who took the metal and turned it into something else. So looking at ways to, as Renee Van Heel says, turn your lemons into lemonade. And then the topic that we will spend the most time talking about is making the house you repaired rebuild a home again. And so some things to remember. It's going to take some time to become comfortable with this space. And for those of you on with us tonight who are not there yet, but you're watching in anticipation, really try to stay focused on your own journey. Don't borrow trouble, as my grandmother would say, right? You know, it's okay. Everyone's proceeding at a different pace, and that's okay. You know, we're all not going to move forward at the same time. And two things to note: if you built the same floor plan house when you move in, you may experience that deja vu feeling, but it's not quite right, right? And if you built different, you may just feel lost because it's going to feel different. Annie, I'm going to let you talk about your feelings there. And then Lisa, feel free to hop in here and just talk about your experience walking alongside with folks here.
Yeah, so when I moved home, I moved from a 1970s home, track home, to a 2018 open concept house. And I don't know that I would have done it any different. I didn't really like some of the aspects of the 1970s house. But when you come home, you feel that. that is something that you're walking into a house, not a home. There's nothing on the walls. There's empty spots where things should be or where you would have put them. And it's just really important that you recognize that it takes a little bit. And you know, for you guys, the holiday season's coming up. You put up a Christmas tree. What does that look like? Do you have your ornaments? What have you replaced? You know, for me, I got really picky about, I only wanted things that I thought were really meaningful to me, that or really made me smile in my house. Um, Things that made me feel good. You know, you no longer you have a blank canvas. You no longer have all that stuff that you've accumulated over the years. And so some people wanted to get back everything that they had. And others, like myself, wanted to just kind of creep along and fill the space as the right things came about.
I'm going to jump in a little on that. The holiday piece is really important, especially if a loss happens or before that, because then you go through all the loss initially. And then during the holidays, there's that sense of being reminded of all the family ornaments and things that are no longer there. I really like what you said, Annie, about looking at it as a new space and doing something a little differently. Some of the things I worked with a couple of the clients were we worked with giving themselves permission to try to replace some of the things that were the most significant. And then we'd go on adventures to and we'd go as a little group and we'd go to antique stores and we'd look for, like, one particular family had a plate that the birthday cakes for the family had always been on that plate. So we searched and we found 3 plates so that they could bring them and let the family choose which one they wanted to use. And so we just did little adventures like that. And it does take a long time, and it's okay, especially if you have someone who can kind of nurture you along in that process. And I think as a therapist, that's where I just had to be really patient and let each and every person tell me what they needed or help them find out what they needed in that moment just to cope.
And when people want to, thank you, Lisa. I think that was very impactful. As people want to give you housewarming gifts, really, you know, as they're fire survivors, nudge them for gift cards. Pick out what speaks to you, as opposed to bringing in things that aren't making you happy at this stage in your life. I think that's really important.
That's a huge thing about giving yourself permission as well to be creative the way you'd like to be. And if you can't figure that part out, that's another reason to get some therapeutic help, maybe an art therapist or somebody who could really even help you identify the feelings and look at what your dreams are.
I'm going to take us to the next slide, and then I'm going to quit sharing my screen for a while because I want to highlight you two front and center here. And so this is just posing the question, what are you going to do with that time now that you've finished the process, insurance and claims process? You know, and just talking about the emotions surging now that you have space to deal with them and feeling at loose ends, because as we talked about much earlier in the process, you know, you've lost those 18, 20 jobs you inherited of being a construction manager and a project manager and a personal shopper and all of these things, these roles you took on.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you have this huge amount of time, and what you've been avoiding is kind of looking inside yourself in many ways. And sometimes it's not a comfortable thing to do because there's a lot going on in there that you haven't necessarily dealt with because you've been still raising your family. You've been making dinner at night. You've been going to work every day. And you're building this house and doing your recovery and navigating the insurance on top of it. So you've now have this huge void. And for me, it was kind of, I mean, it was very exciting to get the keys to my house. And then I kind of hit a wall, and it felt anticlimactic. It felt like, okay, this is what I've worked for. This is what I wanted so bad. And now what? And it's a process. And I have to be honest with you, there was people in my neighborhood who came home and had complete breakdowns, within the first month of them being home. And that wasn't uncommon. It wasn't uncommon for people to get sick in some physical way because of all the stress that they've been under, everything they've held inside of them. And so I think recognizing that as you're through a part of this, you're not through the whole thing. And it takes time. And as Lisa will attest to, reaching out, getting help, figuring out what works for you to help your healing is really huge.
Yeah, Annie and I were talking before this about the importance of really basic self-care.
Mhm.
And it's really easy when you're feeling lost to not remember what that looks like. And it can be as basic, we were talking about as basic as taking that walk with another fire survivor and just being able to talk about it somewhere safe. And it's, other people may not understand and may not want to hear your story, but there are those of us that do want to hear it, and we need to hear it, and we need to share, and we need to hold each other's hand and hold each other up and walk through the process. And so it really does, like, there is a lot that happens after you get in the house. You've shelved all the emotions and feelings that you had to in order to cope with be in the do mode. You're in the do mode, you're doing. That's a really kind of great place to be for a while. And then there's this vacuum that happens when you move in. And it's kind of like, this is a weak example, but it's sort of like retirement. Your identity, everything shifts overnight. So now you've worn all the hats and you've been busy and doing and crossing your T's and dotting your I's, and you've been busy busting your tail. And then this moment happens, right? And you're like, oh, here we are. Or trepidation. Oh my God, it's not the same. This isn't really what I wanted. Well, it's never what we want to go through this process. This is not what we asked for. It's not what we signed up for. It's what we got.
Yeah. And you will have people who will drive through your neighborhood and they won't be fire survivors. And they'll say, oh, look, they got all new houses. How lucky are they? You'll get some of that. And it's a stab in the heart because there isn't anything about that feels good. Yeah, we got new houses, but I'd prefer to have my old house back. For those who did a custom home, you probably would have loved to have built a custom home at some point where you'd had 3 years to think about it and plenty of time and resources to navigate it, not under the pressure of, I just lost everything and now I have to recreate. So that's another aspect of this that is difficult, and we don't always make the perfect decisions when we're deciding on what to build and how to build it, and did I do it right? Was I good with my family? There's a lot of questions that kind of creep into a survivor's mind at that point. Did I make the right decisions? Well, you made the right decisions for where you were at that time, what your resources were, and what you could handle.
Sorry, I got bumped out there for a minute. That was a surprise.
No
So
problem.
I would like to read Karen's
Thank
comment.
you.
She says, I had a heart attack 1 year after moving back into our new cabin. I no longer want stuff. I only want meaningful items. It has been almost 3 years and still adjusting. I totally relate to that. And I think that is common. I have to share with you that there was 3 men in their early to mid 50s on my block who all had problematic rebuilds and all had heart surgery in the 3rd year. So all of this, it takes a toll on you. There is no doubt. And I think your priorities change. I think it's very easy to put things in a box after you've gone through something like this and say, this box is the most important thing. When I look at evacuating now, there's people who say, oh, I have to get this and this and this and this. Guess what? I'm grabbing what little money's in the house. I'm grabbing my photos, a couple pictures off the wall, and I'm out the door
with Poppy.
with Poppy. Poppy left with me the first time, and Poppy's my little dog. And Poppy will leave with me if there's ever another time. But it's really quite that simple. That for me, but for others, it would be catastrophic to lose everything again. But for me, my priorities became crystal clear of what was most important to me.
I'm thinking back about one of the meetings I had with clergy and first responders at about the 6-month mark, because they were beginning to decompensate pretty heavily. They had been on high alert do mode for the whole time after the fire, trying to prop everybody up and deal with making sure that everybody had what they needed, or at least were found. And we did a comparative list. We went around the circle and compared what we grabbed when we were evacuated. And actually, that's a very important thing to do. So if you haven't done that yet amongst yourself, when you're with your others, it's something to do. I found that I did not grab one piece of mail. What I ended up when I got to the next location was I looked in the car and I had my horse helmet and my reins, my rollerblades. I had a velvet cape that I would wear to like the opera. I mean, I had the weirdest assortment of things. And then I figured out, okay, so I'd probably find a horse, ride it as far as I could, get on my rollerblades and keep on going. You know, but it's kind of,
I love that. We had this discussion. We started a thing called, one of the gals in my group started a thing called Wine Wednesday, where you could come and WHINE with her. And it was a great place for survivors to get together and just talk about everyday things. The kids could run around on their scooters or with water balloons or whatever that may be, but just connecting with each other, which is still very, very important to us 6 years later. We still get together at least 6 times a year for different, whether it's Wine Wednesday or 4th of July or whatever that may be. But, being able to kind of have a sense of humor. It might be a little dark sense of humor, but we sat around one night and that was our discussion. What did you find in your bag? And one gal said, I had 10 pairs of panties. I have no idea what I was supposed to put over them, but I had panties. And for those of you wondering what you should take your laundry basket. Because honestly, those are the clothes you actually wear.
that's
Good
brilliant.
tip.
That's so true. Another thing, speaking from the therapeutic point of view, as a therapist, I was a little bit unusual in that I made myself available day and night. I also was working in a federal, I was contracted under a federal contract. So I was carrying a lot of times 3 phones, and it was a very stressful year. But there was so much value in that, because people could call and leave me a message at 2 a.m. and I would get it, and I would know if I needed to call back or not. And sometimes it was just, they had a memory of something that they hadn't listed on the insurance form, and it might be well past the time, and they just were devastated. And they just needed a place at that moment that they woke up in the middle of the night and remembered that they needed to have somebody they could call. And that's what I made myself available to do. And I just think it's really, I think every step of the way, it's really important to have I mean, I hate to say it, but somebody who's sort of a professional at, all right, let's try this. Okay, I've seen this work before. All right, I think in this situation, if you do a little bit of this, it might help let steam off and release some of that anxiety inside. And just gentle, encouraging, not ever telling someone what to do, just suggesting, and they can try what works for them or not, and getting feedback from them, what works for you, and it was just always a lot of conversation. It was a great experience for me too. So
Can I pose to both of you a question? Because I've in multiple disasters worked with some folks who, got through and then decided they didn't like the house they rebuilt, or they made a decision to move elsewhere, and then they're, to get away from wildfire risk, and then found out the community they were moved to 5 years later had wildfire risk. And they're like, well, I'm just going to move back to California, Colorado, because, I left to avoid it. And it's like, it's following me. And so, how do you reconcile the, I don't like the house I built, or I'm just, that feeling of that lack of satisfaction in where you are, because it's really hard not to beat yourself up when you're in that, when you get there. And I know Annie's already said you make the best decision you have with the information you've got, but that's, cold solace when you're cranky about something.
And that's my response to other survivors. But to myself, I'm much harder on myself. And I think that that's common and that's normal. I think that for me, it wasn't as much about my choices. It was about, I rebuilt in an area that burnt. The biggest thing I lost was my sense of safety when I walked into my house and shut that door. The comfort of having my things around me and feeling like, nothing can touch you here. And you don't get that back just by rebuilding the house. What helped me get that back was kind of doing a deep dive on what we were doing different in my community and in my city. Emergency alerts were more common. They were quicker to come out. We did a lot of work to push that information out. Knowing that our public officials had come forward and apologized for not being prepared for a disaster like this. We've had people who returned home, and then there was 2 fires where we had evacuations, and they didn't hit us, but we still evacuated. We had all the anxiety. The smoke was in the air. Some people saw flames again. It was very triggering. What was very reassuring to me was the progress and how quickly they got on these fires. And it ended up kind of formatting in my brain finally, as I saw it happen over and over again, how much more progressive we had become at all this, that I felt more comfortable. And that I realized at that point that I had no desire to move to another community that had not gone through a fire or a catastrophic loss, because I would be going through exactly what I'd gone through in my fire again, and maybe I wouldn't make it out. So that was my kind of process on all of that.
Lisa,
Are
do
there
you
any?
have any
I'm just wondering
words?
if questions are coming in, if anybody out there has any questions about, or something that they need an answer about, maybe where they are struggling, things like that. So please go ahead and offer that if anybody needs some feedback. I was thinking about, I think Valerie, you partly brought me in because of one of the families that I had really been front and center with, and they'd had a very bad experience in their rebuild. In fact, they were taken advantage of and had to almost rebuild the entire rebuild. And they were both, one was in a wheelchair and the other one, they were both close to 80 at the time. It was pretty difficult for them. And they were worldly progressive people, and they were somehow able to roll with this and make it work. It involved a lot of attention. They got a lot of massages. They
Mhm.
did a lot of self-care. In fact, they were really adamant about that. And I was really quite pleased. It was not what I was expecting from them. And they went through it. And even though it was really hard, and they were, she in particular was pretty resentful, and it was very difficult at times for her. They still kept a sense of humor at times, and taught me. It's interesting because here I am, the therapist, but they taught me so much about walking through things like this.
And I'll piggyback on that a little bit. I've spent some time in Maui for their fire, and they're very spiritual, connected to the earth people. And they had a resource center that was set up at the botanical garden. So it was all outside among a lush forest of trees and gazebos. And they had massage therapy there. They had acupuncture. They had meditation. These people taught me a lot about, they'd go out on the water. That was their therapy. And so it's really about it, as Lisa was saying, nurturing yourself, taking care of you. And that means physically, mentally, eating properly, getting exercise, all of those things that can bring you back to your new normal. You don't ever leave the house without packing this. It's like any other trauma in your life, it's going to stay with you. But you can take little bites when you need to, and get it to be manageable.
Agreed.
Well, and being aware that those feelings of being out of control and overwhelmed from this will sometimes trigger things from your previous
Yeah.
experiences, and they'll muddle together. So again, seeking professional help when you're unpacking this, so to speak. One thing I did want to throw out is especially for folks who have children, you will be surprised how much your children paid attention to what was going on. Because as parents, we try to shelter. I just remember the story Renee Van Heel shared of she had protected her kids from going to the destroyed home site. And then we did a survivor to survivor where we had her adult son on. And he said, yeah, Mom, we went by every day after school and walked around it for the hour before you knew we were coming home, because they needed to see it, feel it, touch it to make it real. And so being aware of, because everyone in your family has experienced it very differently. And so, being aware of and open to, and not beating yourself up when you find out a decision you made to protect a family member was not received well.
Yeah. There's no roadmap to this. We don't know how to navigate this. You need to give yourself some grace.
Is
Would you
there a
like to
question up there?
Yeah. Jennifer has put in the chat, in the Q&A. I'm nervous about the work we will have to do with a new home and the surprises we may find in our home on things that might not work as they should. I'm finding I'm trying to make everything perfect and putting off moving in. Do you have any suggestions?
I'm going to go with this, but I think this is Lisa's question, but I think that this is more about control, wanting to have some sort of control. And, you've worked hard at getting home and what your expectations may be, and having those expectations not be met.
I guess in the question, a couple of words I heard, and Annie heard them too, that perfect. I think in regard to the unexpected, there was a line that Joni Mitchell had in a song, sometimes life comes at you like a broadside accident. And that's this. And so here you are, and you've in the do mode again, and you've got this whole thing finished. Sounds like you're almost ready to move in. And then this fear comes up. And I think that's incredibly normal. Just want you to know, it's like really, the apprehension is very normal because you don't know what you're going to feel. And the most important thing is to just simply stay in the moment. Stay with the feeling you have right now, not the one you're projecting. Like, find a way to be really genuinely with where you are this moment. So here you are, you have this projection of it not being perfect, and these things you may encounter that, yeah, they might derail you a little bit. You might have emotional reactions to them, but you're not there right now. And you will have the strength to deal with them when you are there. You don't need to try to pre-project it. Because when you get there, look, you've just made it through a whole, a rebuild. And you were able to deal with the things as they came up, maybe not perfectly. And nobody's expecting that except for maybe you of yourself. But you'll know when something's up, you'll know what to do. And you'll know how to feel it. And I mean, do you agree with this, Annie? I mean, am I?
No, I think you're spot on. I think that the bottom line is that as you get back home, and you're going to have stuff that rolls off the shelf that you're going to have to deal with. And it's emotional, it's stressful, it's anxiety ridden, because we want things, as a survivor, we want things to go back to normal. And our old normal isn't there. So what are the expectations? I'm sure that I remember feeling some of this of, what is this going to feel like? What is my house? I mean, I love my house, but what is it going to feel like? What I don't have that window that my 18-month-old used to look out, because he was just the right height on tippy toes to watch the garbage truck go by. It's a new situation. It's change again, and you've gone through all this change already. And so I think it's absolutely normal, Lisa. I think that you've got it. And it's you have to find what is going to work for you, whether that's walking over to the neighbors and saying, oh my God, I'm back home, but this is how I'm feeling, or calling, getting some professional help, or finding someone who's feeling like you are. Because all of these things that come up, it's not just you. It's a lot of the people. They may react differently. Some people are very stoic and they don't share what they're going through. And so you think they have you think they totally have their shit together. But they don't. They're just as messed up as we are. So just know you're one of the crowd.
I also, thanks for that honesty, and that, for really being real about your feelings. That's what's up. That's where you are. You don't really need to delay moving in when it's ready. I think just take the step. And it's kind of like, I always like to travel, and I always dream of like getting to Italy or somewhere. And so entering into the new and the different for me is magical, except for when it comes to something like this, and it's my world, my house, then I can't look at it as an adventure. I can't put the positive spin on it. I just can't. I'm terrified. Something might go wrong, this and that. It comes up. It's perfectly normal. We can make those little shifts. Like, there could be something about moving in that could become really exciting. It's like Annie picking only things she really, really loves to be in her house instead of hand-me-downs. And another thing she said, which I think is really spot on, you do not have to accept the hand-me-downs or the gifts that people actually are handing to you, the handouts. If it doesn't fit with your decor and you really don't want it, there are excellent ways to say thank you so much, and I already have an idea of what I want there.
Yeah,
Any more questions out there?
I haven't seen any more questions, so
It's hard not seeing everybody's face. I wish I could, just to know to know who's out there. Hello.
Yeah, and something I hold a lot of stock in is if you met your neighbors for coffee to talk about your builders or what you were going through, or God, how do I deal with this? Keep meeting those neighbors. Keep reaching out to each other, because that's going to still be your support system. And you may not have as many of them coming back as you would hope for. And that leads to another issue of, you're going to miss some people. You take what's there, you recognize that you all are in this special club together, and that everybody who's been through this with you understands. And that acceptance is huge.
And not everybody's gonna feel cozy with each other.
Yep.
You're gonna have a few people that you're gonna really vibe with. They're gonna feel like your people, and you're gonna feel safe with. And those are the people that when you have that feeling, you should spend more time with them.
let me throw a question out to the two of you. So, as people move back, what are strategies for dealing with those overly enthusiastic friends and neighbors who are like, aren't you so so excited you got that new kitchen, or you're moving back, and they're focused on this, this is like it's like you won the lottery, right? And you're like, yeah, but I'd rather have my old house with my old stuff than have my lottery kitchen, right? How do you what could people do with that? Because it's like adding salt to a wound, I feel.
Go,
As-
Annie. I can see you nodding crazy.
As I said, people used to drive through our neighborhood. I mean, we had articles in the paper where people were like, oh, Coffee Park's all rebuilt and they have these nice new houses, and they just had these tract homes before. Like we'd won the lottery. This isn't something we chose. It's really hard to get people to really understand who haven't been through it, that I may have needed to do extra work on my house, but I'd still take my house and its contents back in a hot second. I may not ever have to replace my roof before I go from this world. I would rather have replaced my roof. And they don't get it because they see new and shiny. And it's this whole process to me is like a death, and the grieving process, all of that kind of comes to the forefront when we're talking about this. And that's the part that others don't see. It's like when you have a death in your family, someone close to you, after a week, everybody else's life moves on. And they can't see what you've gone through for that year, that 2 years, that 3 years. And so they see a fire came, and then they talk to you. They may see you out of the context of your neighborhood. And then all of a sudden you have a nice new shiny house. And so as much as you kind of want to slap them down, you have to recognize that I don't know what the perfect answer is. I can tell you that there's been some responses that probably aren't appropriate to say here, but I think that recognizing that they just can't grasp what we've been through is really important. And I don't know that even, bringing it to their attention really gets their attention. I just don't think they can wrap their head around it.
No, it's not something you can conjure. Even if you said to them, you too can have it. You just have to let go and give up everything you have, everything.
Yeah.
Is that a question?
Yeah, Karen just shared, you all are so spot on. When we were rebuilding, they kept asking me, what do you want for counters, light fixtures, etc. My response was, I just want what I had. Of course, that didn't happen, but that was the first response.
How long ago did you get your rebuild? When did you move back in?
Are you asking me? or-
Karen.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Well, Karen, if you'll put that in the Q&A, we'll.
It's okay, we can get there.
And while she's pulling that up, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the last bit of slides.
Great.
If I could only make my computer work. There we go. No, not from the beginning. All right, sorry. I'm going to stop sharing because that was awful and that's not what we wanted to do.
For those who are on this webinar, I just want you to know that Valerie was all over the place today doing presentations, and she's now moderating this webinar in her car.
In a parking lot. Yes, I'm very, very,
She's doing an
very,
amazing job.
yes, I've been up since 4:15 this morning, so please forgive me. So
Karen says we
Oh,
were
go
in
ahead.
our home. We were in our home only 2 years. We've been in our rebuild for 2 years.
Got it.
Thank
So
you.
I wanted to just make sure we share these resources. These are national mental health resources. Remind you of our upcoming events. If you're Marshall Fire, please complete our 2-year survey to help us with our advocacy work. Don't forget our final Survivor to Survivor of the Year. That'll be next week. Our just reminder that we have our Ask an Expert. If you have a question, we will be pausing it next week for 2 weeks for the holidays. So you'll just have a delay in being able to post a question. So I wanted to share that. And then thank you to our funders. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I know we had, I thought we had something in the Q&A and I've lost it already. There we
No,
go.
I answered it. They wanted to know how many people were on the webinar, how many participants.
Got it. You know, we're at the hour. I know we'd run for an hour. So I do want to thank everyone for joining. And I wanted to see if there's anything, on our topic. Lisa, you and Annie would like to share just some words of wisdom of, how do you take this, this home, this house you've repaired, rebuilt, and turn it into a home? What helps people with that? What have you found that helps?
Oof. Time. And I like what Annie's doing because this is what one of the families that I worked with the most did. And they would select items that they loved. They didn't just rush out and try to replace everything all at once. Some people need to do that. But I think when you give yourself the time, just stretch it out. Some people just want it done yesterday, and it's not going to work. Just take your time.
Yeah. And, for me, I did not move back into my house. My son and his now wife we had planned on them moving in and me moving in with my guy. So I'll give you a quick snapshot. Obviously, I showed up at his house with, needing some space in the closet, as he said, and he handed me 2 coat hangers, and I told him that was one too many. But rebuilding my house, it became doubly important to me because it was the way that I could help my son progress in life. And it was a place where his father had passed away and where he'd been sick. And so there was a lot of emotions tied to it. My son, thankfully, was very understanding. After I got the keys to my house, they were ready to move in. I took almost 2 months to line the drawers, bring in a little bit of furniture just because I wanted to have something of mine there. And, I wanted to, I wanted to cut back the rose bushes. I wanted to make it my own again. And I think that the biggest thing that's made it our own again is that, he does live there, and we have memories there. We go over there and we have dinner and we have holidays, and it's the memories that you recreate that become, I think, what end up making it, a home again.
Thank you. And I know Pia had put in the just shared a comment. So sorry for not asking questions. I'm still a couple of years out. It has been 3 years, Sai. Just wanted to try to anticipate what to expect and plan for. And I think both of you have shared that no matter what you do, you can only plan for so much. It's you're in uncharted territory, right?
Mhm.
And even the best laid plans, it doesn't mean you're gonna respond the way you think you would.
And I think that's one of the strongest reasons to have a therapist or somebody that you work with, even if it's some sort of spiritual person that you seek counsel with, so that there is someone who can say, okay, you're getting a little too far ahead here, or your head is taking you down the road. Let's go back to where you actually are. Let's learn how to cope and be in the moment. Maybe these feelings that you're having right now feel awkward or scary or whatever, it's let's explore it. You're safe. We can bring you to a place of safety even in the midst of these feelings. And I think that's super important in the process, because it is a process and it will go on. And it's not a dangerous process. It's not a terrible thing. It's actually an unfolding. And you can actually learn so much in it.
Yeah.
If you can stop and be with it.
Yeah. Well said. And as a survivor, just know that I always like to explain this to people, because that's what drove me, is that right in the middle of your chest is a big ball of anxiety. And that is what pushes you forward and propels you to try to go faster or anticipate. And it's normal. It's been handed down from survivor to survivor. It's just part of the catastrophic loss and the feelings of not having any control in your life. And if you can recognize that and kind of bring yourself back a little bit, um, I think that's really helpful. But really take Lisa's advice in, finding that fit for you, in getting some care for yourself and making sure that as you're moving forward, that this is going to sound weird, but you don't let the fire win, right? You take your life back and get the help you need, so that at the other side of it, you say, yeah, I learned a lot of stuff in that. And, hopefully some of that will be silver linings.
Thank you for that. All right. Well, if we have no more questions, I'm going to wrap us up for the evening. We appreciate all of you joining us. Thank the two of you for um, I think I'm going to read the comments aloud. Thank you all for sharing your time, experience, and advice with us tonight. This has been incredibly helpful to hear as our family prepares to move back into our rebuilt home this coming month. God bless and happy holidays to all. And then Robert, listening to this has helped me so much, hearing what others are going through. I'm 3 years so far and approaching moving back, this time single. And that gets into other issues. The circumstances sometimes change. So I hope all of you have a good evening. It's appreciate so much you joining us tonight.
Thank you for the invite too.
Thank you for joining.
And happy holidays to all of you in whatever way that works for you, because because I know with anniversaries coming up, coming back home, that all will look a little bit different. Just try to enjoy your time with the people you love.
Thanks. Thank you.